After the battles of World War II finally ended, silence slowly returned to the fields that had once echoed with explosions and gunfire. Smoke cleared from the skies, and the constant roar of engines faded into distant winds. What remained was a landscape scarred by war, littered with broken weapons, burnt-out vehicles, and memories too heavy to lift. Slowly, the process of restoring order began, one field at a time. The first task after any major battle was to locate and bury the fallen. Soldiers and civilians worked side by side to give the dead a proper resting place. Once that grim duty was done, the dangerous work of clearing explosives began. Bullets, grenades, and shells were carefully collected, one by one, often by men who knew that one wrong move could be their last. The air was thick with caution, and yet the work had to go on. Next came the removal of the larger wrecks, tanks, trucks, and armored vehicles that blocked the roads. Many of them were half buried in mud or twisted into shapes unrecognizable from their original form. Clearing them away was no easy task. Some were dragged aside by tractors, while others were left where they had fallen, to be dismantled months or even years later when the metal could finally be reused. As the years passed, teams of workers and scrap collectors returned to these battlefields. Metal was valuable, and every nut, bolt, or gear could be melted down for rebuilding the shattered towns nearby. The smaller vehicles, known as softskins, jeeps, lorries, and cars, were often towed to collection yards. Many of these had been abandoned in haste, left by retreating troops who had no time to look back. But among the twisted steel and broken glass, civilians saw something more than destruction. They saw opportunity. Farmers in particular began exploring the abandoned battlefields once the danger had passed. They searched for any machine that could help them rebuild their lives. Engines, tires, and frames were repurposed for plowing fields or transporting crops. The same machines once used for war were now helping to grow food again. One of the most popular vehicles found was the German Kübelwagen, a small but surprisingly tough car with incredible off-road ability. Farmers loved it for its simplicity and strength. Sometimes these vehicles were found nearly intact, simply left behind by soldiers retreating too quickly to destroy them. Local mechanics would repair them using scrap parts, giving them a second life far from the battlefield. Another prized discovery was the Schwimmwagen, a rare amphibious car designed to travel both on land and water. For farmers in wet and muddy areas, it was a miracle machine. These vehicles quietly disappeared into barns and sheds, hidden away from sight. Over time, they became a part of everyday rural life, used for decades until they rusted into history. There was also the unusual Kettenkrad, half motorcycle, half tank. With its tracks instead of wheels, it could move easily through deep mud and rough ground. Farmers quickly realized how powerful it was for pulling heavy loads. Many of these machines worked hard on French and German farms long after the war, serving peacefully where they once carried soldiers to battle. German trucks like the Opel Blitz also found new lives after the fighting stopped. Once used to transport troops and ammunition, they now hauled furniture, firewood, and harvest goods. Motorcycles, too, were collected by civilians who admired their engineering. What were once the personal rides of officers became everyday vehicles for villagers and merchants. Luxury cars like the Mercedes staff vehicles used by German commanders were another kind of prize. Some were taken by Allied troops as souvenirs, while others were quietly hidden by locals who admired their craftsmanship. Decades later, these same cars would be found under layers of dust, their chrome still shining faintly in the dark. As time moved forward, most of these wartime relics were lost to history. The world needed metal for rebuilding, and many of the old vehicles were sold for scrap. But a few escaped this fate. They were forgotten inside barns, covered by hay and silence. Years later, when these barns were opened again, people were astonished to find perfectly preserved machines from the 1940s sitting untouched. These discoveries became known as barn finds. Since the 1970s, collectors and historians have searched across Europe for them. Each time one is found, it becomes a small window into the past, a time capsule of war and memory. A rusty Kubelwagen in France, a hidden Kettenkrad in Poland, a Mercedes buried in Belgium, each tells a story that connects the present to the past. Some of these relics have been lovingly restored. Museums display them proudly, their engines once again rumbling softly for visitors who stop to listen. Others remain untouched, preserved exactly as they were found, rusted, faded, but full of silent history. Watching videos of these discoveries feels like stepping back in time, seeing how life once looked in shades of black and white. Each find carries emotion. A car left in a barn for 80 years feels almost alive when its engine turns again. These machines remind us of the lives that once surrounded them: soldiers, farmers, mechanics, and families. They are not just objects, but echoes of stories long forgotten. Even now, modern explorers and collectors continue to travel across Europe, guided by old maps and local legends. They visit abandoned barns, empty fields, and quiet forests, hoping to uncover another piece of history. Sometimes they succeed, finding a relic untouched since 1945. Every discovery brings a rush of excitement and awe. Standing in front of a machine that has survived 8 decades untouched feels surreal. The rusted metal may no longer move, but it speaks of war, of peace, of human resilience. The past never truly disappears. It hides in corners, under dust, waiting for curious hands to bring it back to light. Each relic uncovered reminds us of how war changes everything, but also how life always finds a way to rebuild. What was once built for destruction became a symbol of survival. The same engines that once rolled into battle ended up plowing the fields that fed post-war Europe. The noise of tanks was replaced by the sound of tractors, and the smoke of war gave way to the mist of early morning harvests. Today, those who find and restore these vehicles do more than repair machines. They preserve stories. Each dent, each faded number, each cracked seat tells something about the people who once used it. These forgotten machines are living history, and somewhere in a quiet countryside barn, another relic still waits beneath a blanket of dust, a silent witness of an age gone by, ready to be discovered by the next pair of hands willing to listen to its story.